have to do some, try and move in a little bit. So
Sure.
you see this. Hi, everyone. This is Charlotte Pierce with Ready Row USA from the USRowing Convention. We are live with Janice Holzman.
That's right.
I got it right. With Row New York and Passaic, right?
Yep,
so that's
Passaic
in New
River
Jersey,
Rowing
right?
Association. Yeah. We're on the Passaic River, southern Bergen County.
Yeah, is that a big river?
We have a lot of rowable water, and we have
Okay,
quite a few
good.
boathouses along it.
Is it windy like the Charles?
Not quite as windy.
Yeah.
We do have a head race
Oh,
in the
you
fall
do?
every year.
What's it called?
The Head of the Passaic Regatta.
Okay.
We put it on with Nereid Boat Club, and it's super fun.
I've met some people from Nereid.
Yeah, we have a really good relationship with Nereid. They're just up the
That's
river, like
great.
about 2,500
And
meters.
so, yeah, maybe I do a preview of head races every year with Jim Dietz and Mark Wilson.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, they've been everywhere.
Yeah.
They've been to the West Coast, Ohio, everywhere. So I'll cover that.
You should come out.
I
It's
would
really
love
fun.
it. Yeah, I
It's
think I'm going to do more racing this year. This convention has sort of inspired me to, get back into, because what's the worst that can happen? You
It's true.
finish.
Yeah.
You're-
And competition is fun.
Yeah, and it's the camaraderie afterward.
Yes.
Like before, and the
Yeah.
whole.
Well, yeah, you're always glad to have to cade.
have to cage. That's what they say.
Not always thinking that it was a
my
thing
God.
you wanted to do as you're sitting there at
Yeah.
the start, and maybe even through it. Why do I do this again?
Yeah, it was. I talked to someone about level 2 fun. I do winter hiking in the White Mountains, and I was like, it's, when you're going up the backside of Cannon Mountain in the winter, it's like,
Intense.
why am I doing this? Anyway, welcome to the
Thank
podcast
you.
and live
Thank you.
stream, and you work with Row New York, and as you said, the Passaic is where you.
Where
Do you
I
have
row.
a role there too, or?
So I coordinate the Masters competitive team.
Oh, okay.
So I try to get people to want to race.
Yeah.
So try
Well,
to
keep
inspire
bugging me.
that,
I'll do
and
that.
get people to want to
Yeah.
join our competitive team. We have rec rowing, we have
Yeah.
youth programming, and then we have sort of an intermediate on the way to competitive. But I help coordinate the competitive program.
And how far are you from your work with your office, or do you work remotely for rowing?
I do work part-time remotely. I used to go into the office every day. I was not a rower before I came to Row New York.
Is that right?
That is true.
Were you more into development?
I've been a fundraiser since 1999.
Bless your heart.
And always liked my colleagues who were into sports. Like always just clicked with them. I was a runner and always felt like I had something in common with
Yeah.
them. I liked their work ethic. I felt like I could always rely on them. So when the opportunity to come interview at Row New York came up, I was like, well, it's got to be filled with like athletic people. I've never rowed or anything, but it's got to be filled with people who love, to do sports and move their body. And so
Yeah.
let me just at least meet these people. And it was actually the way the organization had done academic work, because I'd been working in youth development organizations that work on college access. But people do it with like varying degrees of seriousness and varying degrees of success. And I had taught college, so I kind of knew what was needed and heard about the way that Row New York was doing that work. And I was like, well, the rowing piece doesn't really entice me that much, but the academics piece is really interesting to me. So I kept interviewing, and this. I met a bunch of rowers, and they're all awesome.
Yeah.
And I know that was like, I know that like it sounds like I'm pandering, but rowers are just really.
I know, it's like I met Mary Whipple on Friday, and it's like just her authenticity, her fitness, her desire to spread the word. It was really there's a lot of people in the
There's a
sport.
lot of great rowers.
Yeah.
Even my job is to meet with
Yeah.
rowers and talk to them
Sure.
and find out about them, kind of in it for with a different purpose. And one of my teammates is like, "You must love that. Rowers are awesome." And I was like, "They really are." Like,
And it's nice to be back in person to meet, to reconnect with everybody. There's some indescribable quality about being in person. And
Yes.
we did our
Yes.
best during the pandemic, but what an experience. But Let me ask you a little bit for the people who don't know what Row New York
Oh, sure.
is. You know,
Yeah.
describe the organization a bit. And
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
turned 20 last year.
really,
Yes. We've been around a while.
Yeah.
And we provide predominantly free rowing and academic support for kids in public schools in New York City, in one of the 5 boroughs. So we were founded, to really make rowing more accessible to more people. We have now 2 sites. We row in Manhattan on the border of Washington Heights and Inwood, and then we also row out of a boathouse on Meadow Lake in Queens.
Okay.
The boathouse was built for the World's Fair
yeah.
in 1964, and we were founded there actually as Girls Row New York. So we started out as a girls program, and then we added
So
boys.
there's a long tradition of access and
Yes, yeah. And there's
Building.
added boys in 2012 in Manhattan. So the Queens Boathouse is still just girls
Okay.
and gender expansive youth.
Yeah.
And then Manhattan is a co-ed program.
Yeah. And do you have a master's program?
We do not. When I came to Row New York, we were working with a third party to run a master's program out of our facility. But
Right.
working with young people, also with veterans and adaptive rowers, is really what Row New York is good
You
at.
want to keep your focus. Yeah. Yeah. That's
So,
good. So I have a friend she's got an indoor rower. She lives in Brooklyn, but I told her about Row New York, and I didn't know if there was masters. She really wanted to get on the water, and I hope she found something. But
it's
yeah.
hard in Brooklyn, I think,
Oh, is that right?
particularly.
Yeah.
Well, because
Well, she didn't want to travel for an hour.
Right.
It's just hard.
you can go like out Queens Way to Long Island if you're in New York and you want to row as a master's rower.
Yeah.
Or Manhattan, you can come over to
Okay.
New Jersey. And there's a couple of clubs that are within driving
Yeah.
distance.
Anyway, she's doing indoor, maybe more.
But we know being on the water is the.
We know that. It's like,
You think you love rowing until.
yeah, until I row in the Charles, and like those first 10 strokes at 5:30 in the morning, it's just the best.
Heaven.
Or any other time of day, but
Yep.
when the sun's coming up, the herons are flying.
Yep.
So anyway, so Row New York, and I know Jim Dietz and Arshay Cooper have been involved,
Yeah.
and
Obviously, Amanda Krause. founded
Amanda
us,
Krause,
our
yes.
CEO.
And
USRowing.
was Jim and Amanda at the beginning, or who was starting?
So Amanda founded it. Jim actually gave Row New York our first boat
Oh,
to Amanda because she
nice.
was he was her collegiate coach, I think is
I think that's right,
is
yeah,
the story.
yeah.
And so I think that's where we got our first boat from.
yeah.
And so, I think he's always stayed a friend of Row New York, for the last
Absolutely,
20
yeah.
years. I mean, I think people who've been involved from the beginning have really watched the organization kind of grow and evolve.
Yeah, it's kind of the role model for city programs, youth programs.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think that's an interesting it's an interesting place to find yourself as an organization because there are certain things that have come together in New York City that also make a place like Row New York possible that might not exist in every community. So it's always, I think we meet a lot of boathouses and folks who are like, I would love to do something like Row New York where I am, and I think the one thing that I really feel from being at Row New York, or that I've seen, is that it won't be the same. It
Yeah.
has to be place-based. It has to be focused on the community that you're in and building on the strengths that are in your community and what you have available to you to build something sustainable going forward.
I know, it seems like such a daunting task, so I think people sort of look for a template
Yeah.
that they can apply and plug in and checklists and things, but
I mean, I think what Archie's doing with A Most Beautiful Thing Inclusion Fund and really providing the funding, which is obviously
Yeah.
one of the most daunting parts of it,
Yeah.
I think that's incredible work. And I really think of Archie as like a friend, but I'm also just like, I so admire the work
he
that
just
he's doing.
keeps going. He's like the ever-ready bunny. He's just like, how does he not run out of energy?
I know.
He's
I know. He's a really,
keeps inspiring people and
I
all
know.
types of people.
yeah,
which
he's
is
he's a great guy.
yeah.
There's something really special about Archie. He's got a lot of love to give.
Yeah, it just radiates.
Yeah. I know. He's
I
awesome.
met him at CRI in 2018 when he had self-published his first book.
Yes. Yeah.
Sugar Water.
Yep.
And I got goosebumps just talking to him then, you know. And the movie came out, and Mary Mazzio was.
I loved that documentary. I mean, talk about like a high point during the pandemic when I think we were all sort of.
I mean, how did it not get an Oscar nomination?
And alone. Yeah, it's a good question.
Maybe it was the timing or something, but
yeah.
I had the crew, several of them on an episode a couple of years ago.
They're funny.
It was great. It was chaos, you know.
Right.
There were dogs running through. There were kids. Yeah. There was a guy in a car. Who was it? Ken, the guy who first started the program. Yeah, he was in his car.
It's so funny. I don't even like that. That's hysterical.
Yeah. So what else? What's on your agenda mission for Row New York and your work with them this year?
I think we've done a lot. We've made a lot of what I think are really great changes. We have, you know, when Amanda stepped up into the US rowing position, we already had an executive director in place who had started the same week, funny enough, as I had.
And who is that?
Her name's Rachel Citron.
Rachel Citron.
She comes to Row New York with a lot of experience running sports-based youth development programs. So she used to be at an organization in New York City that most New Yorkers have heard of, Harlem RBI, which became Dream, became a charter school, but for years ran a baseball-based sports program. So she just had incredible sort of understanding and chops that she was able to kind of apply to the world of rowing. She's super smart. So we've made a lot of program adjustments and improvements and changes. We brought in a VP of rowing. You know, we heard from our alums that they, you know, especially those that had gone on to row in college, that, you know, especially when you're rowing in a collegiate program and you're like, oh, you know, if you just put in the work, if you're doing 10,000 meters a day on the erg or whatever, you know, whatever that sort of magic formula is.
Jim Dietz always says 10,000 meters a day minimum. You just got to do it.
Right. And they go to a collegiate program and then they hear that and then they get faster and then they, you know, and then, but we're so grateful that they were able to bring that back to us and say, you could have made us faster.
Oh.
We would have loved, now knowing what we know now, we would have loved to have been faster then. And so we took that feedback really seriously and really did a lot of work to introduce elements into our program that, you know, where young people who really want to be on that track can actually be on that track.
And what's the balance between like fitness and then just, you know, kids that maybe just want to row a couple days a week or want to...
So we also introduced, that's what I mean when I talk about we added all these like sort of different elements. We now have what we are referring to as an intermediate program, which is a 3-day-a-week program. I think what really works about that is that sometimes like a high school kid, maybe she wants to do dance, or maybe she really wants to try something else out in the spring. It allows her to like be all in rowing, because we're a club program, so you can be all in all year round. We're 6 days a week. So you can be all in the fall.
6 days a week, that's... How many kids coming in and out in a week?
Right now we have like 175 youth enrolled between the two programs. So one of those days is academics, because we are still a college access program. But if that is too much and you want to do other things, you can also kind of shift in and out, right? You can go into that 3-day-a-week program for the spring. You're still gonna race. You still have other opportunities, and then you can decide you want to go back in over the summer. You can do a summer camp. You can go back to the 5-6 days a week with us.
That's cool.
It's been an interesting experiment, right? Because I don't think it's necessarily how people structure rowing programs. I think a lot of rowing programs are like really all in.
Yeah, I was talking to Ted Benford of the CRI last night, and they've really altered, so that they can expand what. Like, there's one kid from Row Boston who he does football and rowing. He just, he's not quite sure which he wants to focus on. So they made, not just based on that kid, but they made a later rowing option. So
that they could accommodate.
Yeah.
I mean, this is maybe like a little too far afield, but I really think, what we know about successful adult athletes is that they often did different sports and tried on different things. And I think having that kind of relationship with rowing when you're in high school might actually be really effective for creating like a future rowing athlete where they like did it and they did it successfully,
Yeah.
but they weren't sort of like all immersed. Because rowing, right? I think, and we as adults who row and love it know this, like we're sort of willingly going all in.
Yeah.
It can really be all consuming, right? Like rowing can become, I know this is funny, I'm on a rowing podcast saying you should diversify your sports.
No, I was just talking to the guy from Concept 2. I want to get a row erg so that I can cross train on it, so,
Yeah.
but anyway,
But I think like building that, I always think about like what does it take to build like a lifelong love for a sport? Because I think, you also see adults who are like, I'll never get in a boat again.
Yeah.
I'll never get on an erg again. And
talk to too many of those. But, I mean, I'm selective. Like my community is like you start realizing on your Facebook friends or whatever you're on, are more rowers than not.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we'll talk about the same thing.
Yeah. So just to wrap up a little bit, I know you've got to get on with your day, but
we've got one of our masters who's just in college racing.
You got to be there.
Yeah. We're gonna go for her.
So the convention, you're talking about fundraising, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know we talked about this. It's a different approach for every program.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you have some things that you're trying to communicate to people.
Yeah,
today?
I mean, I think what I wound up doing at my workshop was really asking people what their needs were and what their program was, because I think depending on the kind of program you're running, there are options for you that are going to work for one boathouse and not for another, or one program and not for another. I think more than anything, if I were to give like some quick advice, I think getting started is the hardest part, right?
Yeah.
And I think people can be deeply uncomfortable around fundraising or asking people for
terrible.
money.
It's just stressful.
Okay, so I'm going to leave you with this one thought, which has nothing to do with rowing, but
It's just my
it was a game changer, and
Yeah.
it sometimes is a game changer for people.
Okay, good.
Which, I sometimes ask people to sort of envision a time when someone asked them for something
Yeah.
and they were able to give it. Hey, can I borrow
Yeah.
your headphones for 10 minutes?
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring them back, and you have them available, and you say yes. How do you sort of feel immediately after you say yes?
Good, because it's rewarding to help somebody.
There are parts of our brains that like to just be able to say yes. And so if you're asking the right person for the right amount of money, more or less ballpark, where they can really do something and they can help you and they care about what you're doing,
Yeah.
It's reframing this idea that you're asking them for something that makes you uncomfortable. Maybe you're asking them for something that's going to make their day or their week or their month.
Right. It's about building relationships with people and not just dealing with them when you're asking them for money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And then that's like full circle, right? I get to talk to all these great people all the time in my job, which is like the best part about it.
I know. Yeah. And you've had.
Get to hang out with rowers all day.
I know. I'm into him because he's like one of my favorite people in rowing. You just like the stories and just the generosity. And I went down to his event when they were launching the Mystic, his Jim Dietz Rowing Center in Mystic, Stonington, Connecticut. Great group of people. Even like, and the money bags people that whatever were nice too. They were like they were there because they wanted to get this thing going.
And they love rowing.
Yeah.
And they all got the same thing out of it.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody gets the same thing out of it. That hard work and that, attitude above all and like all the things.
Yeah, and making something happen. They just wanted to make something happen.
It's very cool.
Well, Janice, it's really nice to see you, and I hope
nice
we
to
can
see you
continue to talk. And you can come back anytime you want.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Oh,
we have a comment.
already. Wow.
Totally agree. The all-in mentality certainly stands against our message of lifelong engagement. Oh yeah. Okay.
Aww.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your comment, and that reminds me, everybody who.
Oh, that's interesting. I
Yeah.
don't think that anybody would actually.
They do watch. If you watch live, you can comment on the YouTube channel, and our guests will interact in real time.
That's awesome. This was super fun.
Oh, good. I like to make it fun and informal.
I'm glad Jenny asked.